Hello and welcome to This Week in Bitcoin, brought to you by Relai Private. Now, this week around, I'm not going to tell you that we hit a new all-time high. We've seen some corrections, but there are also some major news, so let's get stuck in. First off, we have some news for those of you who are curious about the spot Bitcoin ETFs. The largest one, at least by start when they held their Bitcoin, GBTC, has seen a significant decline, almost 50% in the amount of shares they were A, issuing, and B, the amount of Bitcoin they need to hold as their reserve asset. They started out with 619,000 Bitcoin, an immense number, and are now reduced by almost half. Most of these sell-offs actually happened because shareholders either sold to fiat to cash out. Bear in mind, most GBTC owners who held the trust shares previously and they then converted to the ETF had a significant profit, either by being long enough in the game or by just getting in at the right time in the middle of the bear market and taking a good gamble, which had paid off now, because remember, GBTC shares are not real Bitcoin. And on the other hand, you also saw a lot of people just converting their GBTC shares into something like IBIT by BlackRock or some of the other ETFs out there. This significant decline has actually caused a few actions by GBTC. CEO Michael Sunshine has announced that they will reduce the fees in the future, which they have to do to stay competitive. They're at 1.5%. It's quite high compared to some of the issuers now announcing that they will get rid of the fees at all. And you obviously also have to counteract a bit with the bad press, because GBTC has always had these worries. They've been involved with FTX. They've been involved with major Ponzi DeFi schemes in the past. All of these held GBTC, and this shines a bad light onto your product. And this time around, they just have to counteract. But you have to say that they did a good job so far. You haven't seen major blow-offs. Yes, there is the outflows, but if you compare it to the price, there was some correction due to this. But all in all, the fund is actually holding up pretty nicely, and we'll see in the future if this continuous sell-off will happen. Some of the leverage traders definitely got wrecked with this. A lot of them actually put on leveraged long trades. They now got evaporated, and they also had the sell-off, so this also helps with this constant debasement of the price. And on the other hand, you now have the opportunities for us to stack some cheap sats again. And then speaking of major buying and selling, we also have the news of MicroStrategy this week. Michael Saylor has announced they're going to buy a couple of Bitcoin again. If I say a couple of Bitcoin, they managed to surpass the 1%, the 200,000 Bitcoin holding, and they now hold 214,246 Bitcoin. They purchased an additional 9,245. And if Saylor continues at this rate, he's obviously maybe going for the next percentage in owned Bitcoin. But nevertheless, he actually proves a good point that this strategy has paid off. The shareholders in MicroStrategy must be immensely happy, even with a little bit of sell-off now in the Bitcoin price. Over a span of 12 months, they're still immensely in the plus. If you even go further than that, if you actually go to the point where they started stacking sats to today, the stock is majorly up. And he promised his fiduciary as the chairman of the company, which is to protect the stock against all costs and all attack vectors, which he did perfectly with Bitcoin. Yes, this means that there will be fewer Bitcoins out there, and if he continues this buying spree, it's obviously going to get harder for plebs. But at the end of the day, it's the perfect example to show that you can therefore work with a Bitcoin strategy and protect your company. And last but definitely not least, we also have some news internally again. As you may have noticed, we've launched Lightning last week, and we want to share with you the numbers we have after a full week where users within the Relai app would be able to use Lightning. So far, we've had 1,719 single active Relai users who are also engaged in using Lightning. Out of those, we have 1,944 channels that were created where sats are just being sent back and forth, and we've locked in 4.7 Bitcoin in these channels. It may not seem like a big amount, but compared to like the other transaction that's going on. However, if you look at it, how people are now being able to use their sats, it's an auto convert in the wallet. If they want to swap from on-chain to Lightning, they can get that done. They can go out, they can tip their favorite creators, buy coffee, buy merch at a conference store, and therefore use Bitcoin as an everyday currency as well. That's a big plus, and we're looking forward to having this feature now available for all of our 110,000 users. So if you haven't tried it yet, you can do so now. And with this, we've come to the end of This Week in Bitcoin. You know the drill. If you got feedback, comments, just want to say hello, do so in the comments below, and I look forward to seeing you next week again.